Hi, this is installment 1 of my photo editing series. This is Mary Lou Jen. I want to thank Tony for your picture, letting me edit it and share it with you. So this is a JPEG image. It was shot as a JPEG and the white balance wasn't correct when it was shot. So I'm going to edit it as best I can, but then I want to show you why it's good to shoot raw, and this is a good example of that. So the first thing I want to do is get the white balance where I want it. So I'm going to use the white balance dropper tool, and that's over here on the right. I'm going to pick an area that I think should be neutral. This collar looks like a good spot based on the preview up here. It looks like a nice natural look when I click this collar, and I like where that puts the picture. That's about as good as I think we can get from the JPEG, but I might slide the temperature slider just to fine tune it and see if I get a little bit more natural skin color here. And I'm zooming in. That looks pretty good. I would be happy with this picture. It's not something you would necessarily put as a large print on your wall, but it's definitely a memory to cherish, and so I think it's a high value image. I'm going to decrease the exposure just a teensy bit, so that's minus 0.25. And I'm going to lower the highlights just to reduce some of this glare on his face. So a before and after of what that looks like so far. And actually, I think I like the exposure just a little brighter. So I'm going to undo my edit of exposure now that I've adjusted the highlights. All right. Something that works much better in Photoshop than it does in Lightroom is to soften the background and remove some of these wrinkles. To some degree, I can use the adjustment brush here and reduce clarity. And I'm going to lighten the shadows a little bit, reduce sharpness, and reduce clarity. And I'll leave the flow at about 30 and brush that on. If you want to see where you're brushing, you push the O to show or hide the brush masking so you can see where it is you're brushing and how intense of a change you're making. So if I push O, you can see that I've brushed a lot over there on the left, but not a lot on the right. Just kind of softening the background a bit, and it's going to be very subtle. So then the other thing I want to do, this image, it was shot indoors, it's low light. I'm going to hit done on the brush to escape there. I just want the eyes to be a little bit sharper. Again, this isn't something that you would blow up. And focus is the one thing that you really can't fix in editing, but you can just bring some of the detail and make the illusion of sharpness by increasing your sharpening. Here I've increased it to about 40. And that's because he's small, so I want the impact to be fairly visible. Excuse me. If I did less, then you wouldn't really see any difference, but the before and after, I can click this little box and look just at the eyelashes, and you can see more detail when it was sharpened. And then the last thing that I want to do, actually there's two things. One, I want to reduce a little bit of the noise, so again I'm going to zoom in, and I can see just a lot of noise around his face. I want to just reduce some of that a little bit. I don't want to do too much because then I lost all the benefit of sharpening the image, and I might sharpen a little bit more now that I did that. And finally, the one thing I see yellow color casting on his face, and that's probably just because of where the image was shot. So I'm going to come to the HSL panel and select saturation and reduce the yellow just a little bit, just so I don't see these yellow spots anymore on the face. So that's my before and after of this image, and that's how I would edit this image. I might, if I had a better tool, if I was in Photoshop, I might crop out this bottom red. It's a distraction. That's something to watch out for while you're shooting. It's much easier while you're shooting. So the one thing I did want to show is this image here was shot in RAW. So what I did was to kind of mimic the white balance issue is to adjust the white balance in Lightroom, then export the image as a JPEG, and then import it back into Lightroom. So this image is a JPEG, and it's a simulation of what would happen if I shot this image like this on the camera. Basically what my camera is doing is it's editing it as it thinks it should be, and any extra data it's removing, and that's why the JPEG file will be much smaller than the RAW file. So if I took these two images, the RAW with the bad white balance and the JPEG with the bad white balance, the RAW, my file would keep all of the colors, even though they're not used in the image. It would keep all of the tones of red, all of the blues, all of the colors in my image. It wouldn't discard any of the data that it had, but the JPEG would. It would only keep the colors that it thought it needed for this image, and in this case that's a lot of yellow. So I just want to show how this simple white balance adjustment that I do on a RAW image won't be as successful on a JPEG, and I'm using auto sync, so you can see I'm doing the exact same edit on both files. So I'm getting my eyedropper tool and I'm selecting this paper right here, which should be white, and I'm clicking that, and that comes out fairly close to what my straight out of camera was before, but on the JPEG version it looks like this. You see a lot of loss of color, and the JPEG didn't have the color to fill in the blanks. So it's very bright here, and you've lost a lot of the detail of what you had in the picture. So that's just one example of how shooting RAW can benefit you, because had this image been shot like this, I could not have saved it. The best I could have done is about here. Whereas shooting in RAW, I can go from this image to this image. So I hope that's an encouragement for those of you who are braving RAW or who are thinking about shooting RAW of the benefit to you. I hope that's a good example for you. All right, thanks.